Good evening and welcome to the Monday, October 9th Administrative and Public Works Committee. My name is Alderman Braithwaite and we have a quorum. Is there an approval for the September 25th meeting minutes?
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Are there any corrections or edits? Seeing no lights, all those in favor of approving the September 25th meeting minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Alderman Fleming, would you like to take items A1 and A2, please?
Payroll September 4th, 2017 through September 17th, 2017, in the amount of $2,767,523.41, and the bills list dated October 10th, 2017, in the amount of $4,548,897.93. Move for approval.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Seeing no lights, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Alderman Rainey, item A3.1, please.
Yes. Staff recommends City Council authorize the manager to execute a contract for Fleetwood Jourdain Center HVAC and electrical improvements with Central Lakes Construction Company in the amount of $1,988,485. This is through a series of bond funding from 2016 on. And I certainly do recommend approval. This is a fabulous project.
Second.
Excuse me, it's been properly moved and seconded. Seeing no lights, all those in favor of, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Alderman Suffredin, item 3.2, please.
This is a change order with Schroeder and Schroeder for the 2017 Alley and Street Improvement Project in the amount of $131,880.25. That's for action.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, or excuse me, seeing no lights, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Alderman Simmons.
Staff recommends approval of the purchase of 239 trees and planting services for 115 trees from Suburban Tree Consortium in the amount of $54,367. Funding is from two sources. The first is a general fund line item in the Forestry Division budget. The total budget is $135,000 with a current balance of $55,152. This is for action.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Seeing no lights, all those in favor of passing A3.3, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. We have a presentation for item 3.4. Alderman Fleming, would you like to just introduce it, please? Introduce the item.
This is for the pension and the police pension board, the firefighter pension board, and the city treasurer recommend the city council review and approve the January 1st, 2017 actuarial valuation for usage of the 2017 tax levy that will be receivable in 2018 for the police and firefighter pension funding purposes.
Second.
For action.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Mr. Lyons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Tonight we have a brief presentation from our Fire and Police Pension Board, as well as from our actuarial consultant, Mr. Jason Franken from Foster & Foster. I will note tonight, this is the same memo format that you've seen for those that have been on the council before. You've seen the same format for several years. What you don't see in this packet is a unanimous or a consensus on what we do. Moving forward, I believe it's both pension boards' preference that we move to a 6.25% interest. And as we've briefed the council regarding budget balancing efforts, it would be exceedingly difficult to go down to a 6.25%, as it would add $1,047,000 to additional funding. We have faced additional funding in the past. We just not have faced that in the last 3 years with the same budget situation. budgets are annual issues, and pension funding is a very long-term issue. So we have this lack of consensus this year, but what we have done is provide the council with a statutorily required report. We also have a report that says fund less from the state, and even a lower report if this actuary used the state's requirements for funding. So all that being said, what you have before you tonight is a request to accept the report and for it to be used in the 2017 tax levy payable in 2018. So with that being said, I would rather, in the time allotted, let Mr. Franken from Foster & Foster speak with you directly. He's who we've hired for specific actuarial questions. And then the Firefighters Pension Board President, Darren Doherty, would also like to give a short presentation, the start of which you see on your screen. And Mr. Schoolmaster, you're always welcome to speak as well. That is at your discretion.
Thank you. As Marty said, my name is Jason Franken. I'm an actuary with Foster & Foster, and I'm just going to briefly run through the results of this year's actuarial evaluation. As Marty said, last year we had used an assumption, an investment return assumption of 6.5%. It was discussed last year that they would like to change it down to 6.25% this year. But based on the results of the lowering that, there wasn't a consensus on where we ended up. So just briefly, if I'm looking at the police pension plan, last year we were showing a contribution requirement of $10.2 million. This year, if we keep the rate at 6.5%, it goes up by a couple $100,000 to almost 10.5 million. And the reason for that increase is just due to, mostly driven by the fact that our smooth return over the five-year period is less than our 6.5% assumption. That's part of the reason we're looking to lower that, is to make that a more attainable target. If we lower it to 6.25, however, we have less investment income. And when we have less investment income, it requires more contributions from the city in order to meet all of the obligations. So by lowering it from 6.5 down to 6.25, it increases the contribution from 10.5 million almost to almost 11.1 million. The funded ratio for the year actually remains fairly constant. Even at 6.25%, we went from 46.6% last year up to 46.9% this year. So there is a little bit of an improvement there. Our unfunded liability, however, did increase from 214 million up to 221 million if we use 6.5, and an additional 7 million up to 227.8 million if we lower it to 6.25. The fire plan is very similar in basically all regards. The contribution last year was about 1.815 million. At 6.5% due to some actuarial losses, it increases to 8.35 million this year. And if we lower our assumption to 6.25%, it does increase our contribution up to nearly 8.8 million. So there is, over a $400,000 increase there by lowering our assumption to 6.25%. In terms of some of the other metrics, our unfunded liability went from 89.8 million. Even if we leave the rate unchanged, it increases to 91.1 million, and then it goes up to 96.2% at the lower rate. Our funded ratio, again, is pretty constant. It goes from 43.6% down to 43.2%. So I guess in summary, before I turn it over to Darren, the assumption, we don't necessarily need to change the assumption, but it does, if we fail to meet our target of 6.5%, effectively what we're doing is deferring contributions into the future. The investment consultant, both investment consultants for each of the plan have suggested that if we really want to be realistic about what we think is going to happen in the long term, we should lower that assumption to be more realistic. If we don't, pensions are pay now or pay later. And when you pay later, you have to pay a whole lot more later because you have less money in the fund now and you're earning less investment income. So again, in summary, it's pay now or pay later. And to the extent that we defer this reduction in the investment return assumption, it really will increase the long-term obligation for the city, even if it does provide, short-term relief in terms of the amount of money that goes into the pension plan.
I just want one correction. I thought you said police was 200 million for an unfunded.
Sorry.
It's half that amount, the unfunded, so I don't want that in the tape.
Yes, sorry about that. I grabbed the wrong number. The unfunded liability is for the police plan is 121 million. The total liability for the plan is the 200 million number that I mentioned. So I apologize for that mistake. So with that, I'll turn it over to Darren.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask?
Alderman Rainey.
When you do your report for us in the future, at the top of each page of the report, could you just add one word on each page, just police or fire? Because as we're reading through this,
It's on the bottom of the page,
it's on,
the bottom left-hand corner.
of each page.
So I'm with you. I
I see, I see.
I understand that, and we have added that, so it's just on the bottom of the page rather than the top of the page.
I'm looking at the top. Which fund is this? Okay, it's on the bottom. Okay, good point. I'm glad you did that. I wish I had noticed that. Well, we'll be able to ask questions when you're finished.
Yes,
We'll have a
yep.
couple of questions.
Good evening. I'm going to try and keep this as brief as possible. I know that you all have a long night ahead of you historically. So I want to go through. My name's Darren Doherty. I'm the pension board president for the firefighters. Sorry, I walk when I talk. Firefighters Pension Fund. And I'm a captain on the fire department. I've been on 11 and a half years. I'm an Evanston resident. I'm in Alderman Braithwaite's district. I'm happy to meet with any of you online, offline, to answer any of these questions. Last year, we came before you guys and said we were going to bring some potential tools to address this unfunded liability. That's what's driving these increases in cost every year. So what I want to do is give you guys a real quick brief on kind of where we are and where we think we need to be going. So for those of you who hadn't seen this before, Article 3 and Article 4 pension funds, so the police and fire, provide benefits that are commensurate with duty and service. They provide for non-duty disabilities, normal duty disabilities, occupational disabilities. That's if somebody has like a heart attack or comes down with lung cancer, and they have line of duty disabilities, which is if somebody were to get catastrophically hurt in an emergency situation. These benefits are also the city's long-term disability insurance on the employees, and that's one of those things that going forward, when you hear people say like, hey, we need to close these funds, the state legislatures are fond of that. We need to keep in mind that that becomes an added cost that the city would have to carry if that were to go forward. So where are we today? At a 6.25 assumption, the fire's at 43.2, and police is at 46.9. If you have a historical perspective on this, those numbers haven't changed all that much. The reason for that is we keep changing our actuarial assumptions. All these numbers are based on our best guesses and computer modeling, the expertise of our actuary, the reality of the markets. Last year we had to adjust one of our mortality tables because we found that was out of date. All these things have effects on these numbers. What I will say to you tonight, and I've said it every year that I've come up here, is we're getting closer in line with reality. I would rather tell you that the pension funding is 43% and be close to reality than tell you it is 65% and be hiding a problem. We can make these numbers look like whatever we want. Let's make them look real.
Oh, please don't say that.
No,
That you can make them look
let's
like
make them look
anything you
real.
want.
We're
always assuming you're making them look real.
Absolutely. That's where we're at. We're in line with, I understand, Madam Alderman. Okay, so interest rates are near 30-year historical lows. That affects our returns. We have an investment type restrictions. We're only allowed to invest in certain mutual funds. We're mandated by state law to not exceed a certain percentage of equities. If any of you are managing your own retirements, you know that if you're 60% in equity and 40% in bonds, you're not going to get a huge return back. Changes in actuarial formulas, we touched on that, and basically these are old funds and we're getting more retirees. So, and then finally we have new accounting standards moving forward. The federal government a couple years ago changed this to where these numbers now have to be reported on the city's balance sheet. Where before it was kind of like, hey, you guys have pension debt. Now it is, no, you have pension debt and the rating agencies are paying attention to it. So where does it go? You can see right here that essentially 3 out of every $4 in the pension levy goes to pay off the unfunded liability. 3 important notes. This unfunded liability is on benefits that are already owed to current employees and retired employees. These benefits are protected by the Illinois State Constitution. And because all funding is based on models, these actuarial assumptions can change. The unfunded liability numbers can change when reality doesn't follow our models. So we have a couple solutions. We have stay the course, raise revenue, or issue pension obligation bonds. So stay the course. We have 2 pension tiers. Tier 1 was everybody hired before January 2011. Tier 2, everybody after that. The Tier 2 benefits are significantly less expensive to the employer than Tier 1 benefits. So as the Tier 1 employees retire, more Tier 2 comes in, the cost of the fund becomes cheaper, for lack of a better word. All our employees will be Tier 2 by 2045. So what that tells you is you've got a savings on the far horizon, but it's not something that's going to act quickly. And coincidentally, a Tier 2 pension system is actually cheaper to the employer than putting them in a 401k style program with a 401k match. There's an appendix at the back of this presentation that actually will walk you through all those numbers. This strategy takes at least 20 plus years and will require ongoing increases in the pension levy. There's just no getting around it. Raise revenue ongoing. We can just come here every year and say, hey, we got to raise property taxes. That's not something we're really interested in doing. We want to come up with some systematic ways to address this issue to solve the problem. So we have one-time addition methods. For example, sale of physical assets. This is purely hypothetical. This isn't a plan. This is not a suggestion to sell the Maple Street parking garage. Were we to sell a physical asset in the city for something like that with a purely hypothetical value of $40 million, the cash from the sale would be divided between the 2 funds, 60-40, because if you look at the debt that we're carrying, it's approximately 60% police, 40% fire. That's just the number and beneficiaries in the funds. And then that money would be put into the funds, and that would allow income to be generated through investments and reduce the unfunded liability. We could do cash infusions. In the past, the City Council has authorized one-time payments of, hey, we're going to meet the actuarial numbers, but we're going to toss in an additional $500,000. You know, for instance, today we could propose, hey, we're going to ask, could you guys give us another $400,000 this year? That stuff helps, but unless it's ongoing, it doesn't really result in significant cost savings going forward. We have a proposal for something like a fire impact fee. For instance, we could say that any new construction over 10,000 square feet, because we don't want single family homes to fall into anything like this, would be charged 50 cents per square foot on all new construction. Only new construction, not a tear down. If you tear down a 10,000 square foot building and you build a 10,000 square foot building, you wouldn't pay the fee. If you tear down a 10,000 square foot building and you build a 50,000 square foot building, you would pay the fee on 40,000 square feet. Excludes single family and build out of existing structures, and we estimate that at the rate we're building in Evanston over the last several years, this could bring in something like $500,000 per year. That actually does make a meaningful impact in the unfunded liability. Why the fire impact fee? This is the question I get. Why would we put this in fire and not police? We're actually able to tie increased building volume to increased call volume. Last year we went up over 10,000 calls for the first time in 2016. And the workforce injury rate firefighters nationwide is 0.48 injuries per 1,000 non-fire emergencies. We've gone up 3,000 calls a year just since I've been here. We're potentially, by adding volume, we're adding the potential for more injuries. Finally, we're going to talk a little bit about pension obligation bonds. This would be go ahead.
One quick second.
Yes, sir.
Alderman Rainey?
But not fires. Because my reading of fire science, the little that I do in government journals that we get, shows that there's actually the new buildings with the, improvements, that they are actually safer than the buildings that are torn down that they replace.
That is true. We are seeing a reduction fires are down, career field wide across the country. That is
And
true.
that if there is a fire, the systems that are included in those new buildings put them out more safely.
Or keep them in check as much as
keep them in
possible.
check,
We
right.
still have to respond. We're still going.
So what you're really saying maybe is that the increase in population, the people, are having heart attacks and
Yes,
losing their legs when
and-
they're out on the street, those kinds of things.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I
Yes.
see. Okay.
Okay. So pension obligation bonds, we create a fixed schedule. This would be the city issuing something, hypothetically speaking, hey, we're going to sell bonds, issue bonds for the entire unfunded fire liability, $96 million. That reduces payments on the unfunded liability if the investment earnings are greater than the interest rate on the pension. That's a very long way of saying if we can borrow money at 4.5%, but we're going to make 6.25% on it based on our assumptions, there's a spread there that we may be able to utilize for cost savings. This is not new debt. I can't. This is the best metaphor I can use for this is it's a credit card balance transfer. We owe this money. It is debt. This is not saying we're going to create new debt. This is restructuring the debt that's already there.
So I guess my question is based on this model, who else is doing it?
There are other communities that are doing it.
For example?
Who did are you?
The state of Illinois did it some time ago, but it was not structured properly, and so there were problems.
Okay,
States and large municipalities have.
So that's a bad example. So in a supplemental or another attachment, you can give us a good example of, it sounds real interesting. I'm just curious to know who out there is doing it. Alderman Rainey, do you have a question?
Well, I want to make sure, once you tell us the bad news, I'm sorry. I want to make sure that once you tell us the bad news, which we hear over and over and over again, Mayor Tisdall was religious in telling us how bad it was and all the various ways we could fix it, and we can fix it with lots of money. I would like you to share with us what is in the pension. What people think that we have never given any money to the pension. That always sounds like all there is debt. You need to share with us what money is in the pension fund. What do we have available to provide to our hardworking firefighters in your case, and then whoever does the police, tell us that.
Currently in the fire pension fund, there's roughly $76 million.
$76 million.
Yes, ma'am.
And so that money, at 6.2 at one time, I know we were at 7.5, which was ridiculous. And it was generating at one time, I think, 3 or 1% or whatever it was over time. So that is the basis upon which we generate revenue.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. So let's see. This is basically what this looks like. In the current method on the left, we're paying $2 million to the normal cost. That would be what a healthy fund would cost if we were 90% or 100% funded, roughly $2 million. Again, these are nominal values. We might say $7 million of that is going to the unfunded liability. Under pension obligation bonds, we're looking to do something like, you're still going to have the normal cost of $2 million. That's always going to be there. The interest on the obligation bonds, $4.3 million, and then maybe $1.5 million, again, nominal values, would go to serve the actual principal of the bond itself. And you can see the one on the left is taller than the one on the right. We're hoping to be able to utilize get some savings in that difference. Advantages of the pension obligation bonds. Right now, fixed debt interest is at historical lows. If we're going to bond, now is probably the time. It puts the city on the footing for a long-term solution, potentially. Reduces the risk of future budgets. This is a long way of saying this council, and since 2008, has been really good at servicing the pensions. We don't want to go to a time where there's a council comes in and says, well, we're actually going to fund these at the state required minimum level that everybody knows doesn't work. And like I said, this council's been great. I have no qualms on them. I just don't want to look forward 20 years and have a problem come up. This may reduce payments on the liability if interest rate on borrowing is lower than future investment. We beat that dead horse. The potential disadvantages, the money borrowed is above the risk-free rate. This isn't putting money in T-bills and getting a return. We have to get at least 4.5% on this money to pay for the loan. The money borrowed is locked in. Once that money goes out into the bond market, you have to pay it back. It's got to go in that way. Bond rating agencies are neutral to negative on this approach. I'm going to be just right up front with that. They don't like that, and the reason they don't like it is if you're Connecticut, you can, with state law, change the pension benefit and reduce your costs. If you're Illinois, you've got a constitutional mandate to not reduce benefit. So we kind of don't fall under that whole thing. For us, from what we've been hearing, they're more neutral on that. It may increase the liability if future investment returns are lower than the cost to borrow. If we have a negative 5% year, obviously that's going to affect returns. And a big bet, doing the whole thing is more risky than doing small chunks over time. You know, we could do 10 million a year for 10 years. We could do the whole thing in one grab. So what we are here tonight asking for is that you direct the city staff to basically begin formal investigations into these options. We'd love to come back to you guys on a third Monday in February or March or April with this whole thing totally fleshed out for each of these options. We have modeler software that can show us the effects of extra payments on the pension funds, and whether it's the price of stay the course, we'd like to be able to present that to you. If it's the price of selling physical assets, we'd like to present that, and if it's pension obligation bonds, we'd like to be able to give those a fair hearing.
And if I may, would you go back one slide?
Yes, sir.
And members of the committee, another reason that these are sometimes viewed negatively is the actions of the entity after the bonds are issued. The bonds are issued, look, we're 80%, 90% funded, and then the entity doesn't follow normal funding again. You have to issue the bonds and then stay with the program. So that's what's seen in the case, as Mr. Schoolmaster stated. The state of Illinois issued $26 billion. And then didn't put in what they were supposed to over the next several years. So then it does not help if you take the one time and then fall off of what you also need to do routinely. And that's why, as Mr. Doherty pointed out, the normal costs have to stay. The $2 million can't go away because of a lump sum payment. And I just wanted to make sure that the reasoning behind that negative outlook was how people executed this, not necessarily the idea in and of itself.
So we've put together a committee with Mr. Lyons, both pension board presidents, both pension board investment managers, our actuary, one of the other fire trustees, and we've been chewing this stuff over for a couple, I think we're at about a year actually with a lot of these ideas. We would really like the city's support to view these fully and give them a fair hearing in each case, because we want to be part of the solution with this. We don't want to keep coming up and saying, hey, look, these numbers are going up. You're doing the right thing, but the numbers aren't changing. You're doing the right thing, but you need more money. We'd like to be part of the solution.
Alderman Rainey.
I don't know why. Can you tell us, I'm sure it's in here, and I'm sure I read it, but my eyes are. Can you tell us what the police and firefighters contributed to the pension fund this past year, and what the city contributed?
Yeah.
That's,
So it's, on the fire report, it's page 25, and,
The bigger number, you don't have it, you said it's 25?
yeah.
That's 151.
but, I mean, we have this in front of
Oh,
us, but
okay.
the public doesn't.
Okay. So for the fire pension fund, the amount of money that went into the plan from contributions during 2016, that's calendar year 2016, the members contributed $997,000, and the city contributed $7,396,000.
Page 182 of the packet.
And then for the fire pension plan, the members contributed 1.7 million. Sorry, the police, I'm looking at one. The police pension plan, the members contributed 1.7 million, and the city contributed 9.4 million.
So you see, therein lies the problem. I mean, that's why it's hard to bump us up over the 400,000 this year, because those of us who live here are having a real hard time getting through this budget year. And so I certainly can't support another nickel on our tax bill. No, not another nickel. And I certainly would be willing to take a look at selling the garage. However, we all know what it costs when a garage is privately owned for people to park there. Just take a look at the garage down on Sherman Avenue that's privately owned, or the garage over on Davis Street that's privately owned. You know, if I have to park in either one of those, it just kills me, because I know the one down the street is like first hour's free, et cetera, et cetera. So it's rough. It's really rough.
That's something we're aware of. I mean, I'm an Evanston resident. I've lived here since 2004. I enjoy living in the city, and I'm very aware of what the tax bill in the city looks like. We're also very aware that these pension funds live and die with the city. You know, we want to be a livable space. We want to be
And the percentage of the pension on our tax bill is growing and growing and growing and growing, which means our fees and fines and licenses and all the other charges from the city have to grow and grow and grow. As the pension percentage of the tax levy grows and grows and grows, then all the other fees and rates, et cetera, have to grow and grow and grow. And we're having that trouble with our garbage tonight, so. I'm just stating the obvious. If you
Yes,
live
ma'am,
here, you
absolutely.
know exactly what I'm talking about.
So again, what we're looking for is just the direction for city staff to go through and answer the questions and help us build the full and complete picture with this.
Well, I'm certainly caught off guard. I didn't know we were going to be asked. to
Yeah,
sell
and I
the
wanted to
garage
ask
tonight.
Marty, Marty, can you just give us, the committee, some feedback from the staff's perspective? Just
Sure.
what are your thoughts on this?
Well, a year ago, in the report, we noted to the council and the committee that we should look at this, and that over the next year, in the report given in October of 2016,
Okay.
We stated that we would take the time to look at options for pension funding.
But I don't recall this being an option. Maybe.
But these
it
are
there?
these are the options, if you will. So there are other options, but they're beyond our control. For instance, as President Doherty noted, yes, there's 401 style options, but those are according to state statute. We do not get to determine the funding mechanism or the benefit level. But those are things that the council can lobby for, that anyone can lobby for. What you have in front of you is what we can do under current statute.
Okay.
And also as provided in the report, you have from the gamut of the very lowest we can do, which is on the report, and it's $7 million less than what we're funding now, all the way up to what we could do through pension obligation bonds, through going to 6.25. The rate that Moody's would have you believe we should use is 5.5 or somewhere around there, and that would take the pension levy up another $3 to $4 million easily. And that's Moody's doesn't have they're not saying you should or shouldn't. They're doing the math.
Sure.
That's all they're doing. So back to Alderman Rainey's question of being caught off guard, I apologize on behalf of staff, but this is something that we want to look at, and the only request tonight is to take the time to do a more full-blown report that we would actually then come back to the council to discuss. Tonight, neither of the boards are asking for a 6 1/4. They're asking that move forward, but give us the chance to look at all of the options so that we don't have as Mr. Doherty pointed out very clearly, that next October we don't say we kick the can down the road, so it's 1.5 million 2018 because we didn't do it in 2017. And that's the request, which I'm supportive of because it actually provides the council with strong footing of the path you're doing could be the best, stay the course could be the best, issuing different debt could be the best, selling an asset could be the best, but you won't get that out of 10 slides in a PowerPoint. And we have a couple of folks here, investment consultants and things of that nature, that we would want to show. We've done some probability analyses, lots of things. We knew we couldn't do it tonight, but we wanted to get permission to move forward so it wouldn't be a surprise when we bring it back.
Sure. I guess and followed by my one question would be, I would love to see what other cities are using this model. I can appreciate the example of transferring credit card debt, but I'm sure it's much more complicated than that. So I would love to be able to understand that process. And Alderman Rainey.
Any talk about additional contributions by the recipients, the potential recipients, the police and fire?
Well, that's not allowed under state statute. So we could not ask and they could not give. Even that's
Bake
just
sale? I mean,
well, and if you, I will. Right now, I'm working with.
could you share that kind of legislation with us?
Sure.
The requirements.
Sure.
I mean, 'cause
and
I'm
it's not as if if you look at who saves the most out of all staff, it would be the fire. In their own 457 plan, there's a real goal to be properly funded both inside this pension fund and out. That's why you see them here. They want to take responsible actions, but we will share that. The specifically what the statute says, and that there aren't any municipalities that are. IMRF had a few municipalities that were outside of IMRF. That's the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund. Morton Grove was one of them, and they're in it now. I'm unaware of any municipality that is allowed to be outside of the downstate police and fire pension funds other than the city of Chicago. Any fire protection district must be in it. Any sheriff's department must be under the sheriff's pension fund.
Are there any privately owned libraries? Because I would consider selling our library. Also, what if
So that is an individual request, not
it's a
reflected by the
recommendation?
committee. Just so
What
we're
about?
clear.
I mean, we have 5 of them. I mean, we're going to have 5 of them or
Yeah.
something. We don't need all those. What about the whole idea of once we get Robert Crown done, would that be attractive as a private facility? I mean, I know it's not now, that's not a joke. by the way.
That's a very legitimate request. Once any entity is willing to take over a going concern. So I could not, and Robert Crown, I stood before you and said, here's how it's going to work just at the last council meeting for what will happen with operating revenues and things of that nature. When we proposed the parking garage solution, that's something that communities look at all the time, monetizing an asset. And again, we've seen how it's been done, I would say incorrectly, to the south of us, where the money was that Chicago monetized the parking system and then did not necessarily use all of the assets to the best of their ability long term. If you monetize an asset, it can't go into the operating fund to pay for salaries. That's just not a long-term solution, and that's not what's being proposed. It's a big asset to take care of a big liability, not operating costs.
Who owned Skyway before it was sold? Did Chicago?
City of Chicago.
Chicago.
Yep.
Alderman Fleming.
Thank you. I just was going to say I support you all moving forward with an, more thorough analysis that you'd bring back at another time. And I also just wanted to thank, I'm sorry if I got your name, but thank you for the work that you've put in. I appreciate that you came here saying you don't have a solution, but you're looking to make one that does not further the tax burden for our citizens. So I wanted to appreciate that.
Marty, can you lay out the timeline? Because I'm sure this is going to fall right into budget season. What are you?
Well, we know that the council is busy the next Monday after Monday after Monday. We would hope to get to the council on a third Monday so
Okay.
that you'd have the time to devote a half hour to an hour to the subject and have experts like Mr. Franken, also investment advisors. You need to hear from experts on this, and it could even be Moody's or PFM or investment advisors as well, so that they can all come together for a joint report. So I would look for it's going to be difficult. The earliest would be the third Monday in November, and I just don't see that. So I see the third Monday in January as the
Okay.
date. Once we accept this year's funding,
Right.
we're done, but the group might have thought that last year at this time.
Sure.
So I want to try and get that commitment of a January, February, third Monday.
That's good. That's real good. Are there any other questions?
I just need one page explained.
Please.
I'm sure it's so simple, I just didn't understand it.
In the report or on?
It's in both reports, but it's page 151. I couldn't.
151 in
just
the
couldn't
packet.
figure out
Page 25.
at the top where it's talking about income. I just couldn't understand member city, city for members,
Oh,
changes in net assets available for benefit. I didn't understand what that meant.
So are you looking at the fire or police specifically?
The numbers aren't important, it's just that what it means, it's in both reports.
For the city, for members?
Just explain.
Well,
what those-
that's, that was from the financial statements. Frankly, they're nominal amounts. It's like
I
13,000.
know, but I didn't understand what it meant, so could you just tell me?
Yes, so it was in the development of the financials. Maybe Marty can,
What are you looking at?
I'm just looking at this one here. It's contributions.
So it says, changes in net assets available for benefits. So something happened.
No, she's not looking, right.
The top.
So this is.
Alderman Rainey, I will look for the city for members. That's usually a transitional number, as as our actuary pointed out. It's a small amount.
9 million isn't a small.
No. The city, the contribution, that's our total contribution. So that's the tax levy, personal property replacement tax. That's how much the city's putting in, 9,437,000.
So this 1,700,000, that's something left over? that
No,
we
the
added?
1,731,000. That's the amount that the members are putting in.
Okay,
For the police plan, they put in 9.91% of their paycheck, and
Fire
it's-
is 9.4.
and fire is 9.455. So that amount, the contributions member, that's the amount that the active membership of the pension plan is contributing to the fund.
And Mr. Chair, I apologize that we've taken up so much time, but I appreciate everyone's questions and willingness to look at this. It is, as we know, a very large issue at almost $19 million. And we will be back with you as quickly as possible. And should you have any questions after this, please provide them to me. And if anyone would like to meet with the actuary to go through the report, I can arrange that with any new members of council that would like to understand how an actuarial report works.
So you're asking us two things. We have what's written in front of us, and then there's also the direction to have staff expand this. Can all that be taken care of under the one action, or are you going to need a separate motion to direct staff to look into?
The action for the report is a referral from this committee saying they would like staff to do X.
Okay.
That would be
But
my
you also
understanding.
want us to pay the bill, don't you?
We would like you to, we don't envision, I will come back if there is a substantive bill associated, we'll come back with that in the interim.
No, but the $6,000. You want
Oh,
us to-
that we've already have a contract for that.
Already paid that.
We already have a contract for that. But if we have a substantive bill for the analysis, that would come to ANPW. And if we need to put something together. Right now, all of these folks have been working within their respective contracts as advisors, et cetera. But we go into this level of detail, there will be additional costs, and I will bring that to the committee. I do not envision it being an exorbitant amount overall. It will just be the amount to do the analysis, because a lot of it's done. We just don't have the time to give it to you tonight.
Okay. So I think we're just going to pass this and keep moving, right? All right. So it's been moved and seconded to pass item A 3.4. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The motion carries. We're going to keep on moving. Item 3.5, please.
That's me.
I think that's,
Okay. We're being asked to approve an agreement with Municode, Inc., to provide a centralized cashiering system to the city of Evanston. It's a cost per credit card transaction model. This means that the city will only pay an expense when a credit card transaction occurs, which is 55 cents per web or agent payment. Total estimated expenses is $320,000. Is that right? Yeah, I think so. Move approval.
Second.
it's been probably moved and seconded. Questions? Alderman
is-
Fleming.
Oh, I just want to say one thing. It's amazing that that we didn't have a connection between
Right.
the payment that they were collecting and anything else. It just
Seems short-sighted. Look at hindsight, 2020 hindsight. Alderman Fleming.
I just have a quick question about the cost here, and maybe I just read it wrong. So it says there's an annualized, is that you, Marty? Cost of $57,179, and then later it says there's an approval will bring total estimated expenses to $316 for 2018. So can you just help me just understand those two, please?
Certainly. The two costs refer to the passport portion that came to you less than a month ago, that part of it, and this part of it. These two together will be combined to have a lower cost than the Duncan system that we've been using for the past 10 years. And we think that this is going to provide us with a lot more flexibility and a lot better experience, including a lot of technology that's going to help people who wish to pay in a variety of ways. And we're talking about a lot of things as far as our operating costs. This will reduce our operating costs right away, but it also gives us more flexibility about our hours and where people can pay and how they can pay. And it will go beyond just parking. So the Muni code is for all of our cashiering. For somebody who comes in and is paying a permit, how it comes down to collections from the permit desk. So,
Right. So I have that. But if you could just tell me, so this system costs us about $316,000 a year. Mm-hmm. So this 5,700, what am I looking at? Yeah, 57 is, what is that?
that is a part of the overall, and so that is that's our estimated cost at our current transaction levels.
Okay, got it,
So,
all right.
so if we have a lot less transactions, we would have lower costs. Our goal is actually to have a little higher transactions
Right,
going through this
okay.
because it will save staff time.
So one is more like a hardware cost, the other one is like an operating cost.
Right. In years past, I would have come to you and said, we actually have a few of those options that I'd like to buy a cash receipting system for $300,000. And instead, we're going to pay for it through each transaction. So there's no out of pocket for the capital downstroke for all of the funding.
Okay, so one more quick question. So these fees that are on page 207, do you think that we can negotiate them down? Because, so it's, I'm thinking I pay most of my bills online, right? So it's 55 cents per payment if I pay using my bank card online, 55 cents per payment if I use my credit card online. So assuming we want to have people pay online more, maybe, is there a way we can try to
Well,
negotiate?
these are lower than what we're paying currently, and I can provide that. I'll provide it in a more succinct manner. So we have negotiated down from what we're currently paying.
Okay.
That's where part. But I'll ask the question.
Worth an ask.
That's right. I will ask the question because the question will be, you're approved if.
Right.
There you go.
All right.
Perfect.
Thank you, Marty. Seeing no further lights, all those in favor of passing A 3.5, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Alderman Suffredin, item A 3.6, please.
Sure. A 3.6 is a contract award to Groot Industries for residential refuse collection. The initial annual cost is $1,580,136 for action.
Is there a second?
Second.
We've been discussing this over the last couple of meetings. Are there any questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of passing item A 3.6, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Alderman Simmons, item 3.7, please.
Staff recommends that City Council authorize City Manager to negotiate and execute a 5-year condominium refuse collection agreement with the optional for one additional 3-year extension to Lakeshore Recycling Systems for the collection and disposal of condominium refuse for a 2018 unit price of $6.25, resulting in an initial annual cost of $423,000. And this is for action.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Again, another issue we've been discussing over the last couple of meetings. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Item 3.8, Alderman Fleming, please.
Staff recommends City Council authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute a 5-year residential yard waste collection agreement with the option for one additional 3-year extension to Groot Industries for the collection and disposal of residential yard waste and food scraps at the unit prices indicated in the table below for an initial annual cost of $655,134.10. This is for action.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Seeing no lights, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries. Before we, I'm sorry, Alderman Rainey, you want to read item 3.9, and then we have a presentation from Director Stonebeck.
Well, this is a presentation on the analysis of our solid waste fund, and staff wants to make a presentation regarding the balance of negative balance of $800,000. Which I have a lot to say about.
Thank you.
I can't see that.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. Dave Stoneback, Public Works Agency Director. I'm going to be showing the tables that were part of the packet as well.
Hey, I'm sorry, before you get started, those numbers are small for me. Can you expand the screen just to
What page is that on?
eliminate?
Is that from the budget or from our?
It's the attachment that's on page 232.
I got it. Oh, yeah, here it is. Okay.
And then this goes in conjunction with the other tables that were in the packet as well. But this is a spreadsheet that shows the impact to the solid waste fund if we were to move with the first option was to, which includes both property tax increase and service charge increases. Just trying to explain some of this. In row 31, we're showing the deficit balance of $800,000. In column C and D, we're talking about 2018. The expenses, as shown in column C, are the expenses based on the contracts that were just approved, what we think will occur in 2018. The revenue shown in column D, the first item is the $700,000. That is what our proposed transfer from the general fund to the solid waste fund would be in 2018, which is a $350,000 reduction from what it currently is. We also recommend a 0.5% property tax increase, which would generate $205,000. That's shown in row 3. The next several revenues are existing revenues that we have, and then what's shown in rows 9 through 15 are higher service charge revenues based on the service charges increases that are proposed on page 227 and they're in different amounts, so it's difficult to say, but it's a 9% rate increase basically for residential refuge, 3% for condo service, and then the yard waste, depending on whether it's a cart or stickers, that revenue is there as well. So if this takes place, we have additional revenue of $205,000 coming in, and approximately $450,000 coming in from the service charge increases. We operate at a revenue and $478,000. That would decrease the deficit in the solid waste fund to just over $300,000. In columns E and F, we're talking about the projection for 2019. There are no service charge increases. We're projecting only a 0.5% property tax increase, and that's shown as at $205,000 in row 4. There is an increase in our expenditure shown in column F, or I'm sorry, column E here. Everything in all of our expenditures are proposed to go up 2%. That would include, in the contract that we passed tonight, the rates adjust annually anywhere from 1.5% to 3.5% based on the consumer price index. I took the liberty of establishing it at 2%, so we're showing increased cost expenditure to provide those services. So we're trying to get an accurate portrayal here. With the 0.5% property tax increase, we believe that we will have an operating surplus of $302,000, and as a result, the solid waste fund deficit would reduce to $19,000. Columns G and H are the projection for 2020. Again, we're projecting a 2% rate increase from expenses from what was projected in 2018 to 2019. We are showing the two property tax increases that were completed in 2018 and 19. No new property tax increase in 2020. But you can see in through here that we're projecting higher revenue because, again, we're projecting sanitation rate increases, and those are shown on table 2 on page 228 of the council packet. So overall, at the end of 2020, we project that we'd be about $36,000 in the positive for the solid waste fund. So I guess this is the recommendation that I have. When you look at it, we're currently transferring $1,055,000 from the general fund to the solid waste fund, and that equates to about a 2.5% property tax that's taking place now. Under this scenario, we would have a total of 1% property tax, 0.5%, and then another 0.5% over the 3-year time period, and then we just raise the sanitary sewer charges up to make that offset.
Did you want to ask your question now, Alderman Rainey, or wait until the end of the presentation?
I'd be glad to ask it now.
Sure. Question from Alderman Rainey. And is Marty still in the room, Dave? I have a quick question for Marty if he's still here.
Dave, how would you assess that tax? To whom would the tax be assessed?
Property tax? Mm-hmm. It would go to all landowners in Evanston.
Everyone gets a property tax bill.
That's correct.
And a 1%, you said 1% property tax?
In this scenario, I'm proposing 2 0.5% property tax increases, one in 2018 and then a 0.5% again in 2019. So each one of those would generate approximately $205,000.
But that's the 0.5% each year plus the increase, the monthly payment increase, right?
The sanitation charges?
Right.
They're shown, the sanitation service charge increases are shown, it's tough to see it in this one because I didn't show 2017, but you can see here we're projecting $1.502 million, and then with the sanitation charge increase, we're projecting revenue of 1.59. So overall, the property the sanitation charge increases would generate an extra $450,000, $451,000 in 2018, and then in 2020, they would generate an additional $209,000 in sanitation charges.
Right, so, but you're talking about option number one, correct?
This is option number
Right,
one
so
only
that
at
has an
this point in time.
increase. Is it my turn? I'm sorry, I jumped in. You didn't call my name. I'm
That's
sorry.
fine.
So it has a property tax increase of 0.5%, and it has, I will call it an out-of-pocket increase as well. So like I have it calculated here, if you have the 95-gallon cart, your rate goes up about $1.55 a month, according to your calculations. And that includes, you factored in for that CPI increase.
Yes, it does.
Yes, so that's the only increase they'll have.
That is correct. When I can summarize all these when I get to attachment 4.
Oh, okay.
And I was hoping to get through the 3 options first to make sure that everybody understood what the options were.
Thanks.
So option 2 would be to raise revenue using property taxes only, no sanitation charge increases. Again, we're proposing to reduce the transfer from the general fund by $350,000 every year. So it's currently over $1 million. It would be $700,000 in 2018, $350,000 in 2019, and then none in 2020. Using property tax only, I propose a 1% property tax increase in 2018, a second 1% property tax increase in 2019, and then a third 1.25% property tax increase in 2020. Our revenue from sanitation stays at that 1.382, so we're not increasing the sanitation charges. They would continue to pay that same rate. And we start with an $800,000 deficit. In 2018, we'd have a operating surplus at $232,000. The deficit would go to $567,000. In 2019, we'd have a operating surplus of $261,000. Our deficit would go to just over $300,000. And then in 2020, we'd have operating surplus of $330,000, and that would put us into a positive solid waste fund of $14,000. So these, option 1 and option 2 are very similar in how they move the deficit out of the solid waste fund while reducing the general fund transfer over the 3 years as well. A third option that I looked at was just to do service charge rate increases. And this one, in my opinion, did not work at all. The rates have to go astronomically high, and even at the end of 2020, we're still $190,000 in the hole on the solid waste fund balance. So you can see what similar to the first year, it's $450,000 coming in. It's the same rate increases that I proposed under option 1. There were no rate increases proposed in 2019 on option 1, but that would bring in another $39,000. And then in the third year, we'd have some significant rate increases again, and it would bring in $332,000. So I would not recommend option 3. I just wanted to propose it and show you what would happen here. Attachment 4, which is on page 235 of the council packet, indicates what happens when we do this. And I selected 4 different type of property owners. Owner number 1 has a property with a market value of $200,000. They use a 65-gallon cart and 10 yard waste stickers a year. And so currently they're paying $112 annually for that. And then this shows what the increase would be over time. So, I mean, it does go up. And then this option for this person, you can see that raising the property taxes would be better than using both property tax and sanitation charge increases. These numbers in this last column is just a reminder where the solid waste fund balance would be at the end of 2020 once these were imposed. So again, alternate number 3 shows it to be the most expensive, and yet it doesn't help the solid waste fund. For property owner number 2, they own a market value house of $400,000. They use a 95-gallon refuge cart. And again, for option 1 is the increase of both property tax and sanitation charges. They go from, and I'm sorry, I can't hardly read this either, from $340,000. Thank you. So property owner number 2 is paying about $240 annually now. They would see the rate increase going up to just over $300. Doing it by property tax only is the best benefit for them. Owner number 3 has a market value home of $600,000. They use a 95-gallon refuge cart and a yard waste cart. They're currently paying $240 as well. The difference between option owner 2 and owner 3 is the value of their home. So you can see it goes up here, but then this shows that if you own a house over $600,000 or more, then having the mix of property tax and sanitation charge increases to their benefit. In this case, and then owner number 4 has an $800,000 market value home, 65 and a 95-gallon cart and a yard waste cart. They're currently paying about $336 a year. It would go to about $450. But again, the cheapest model here would be for them to have the property tax and the sanitation charge increases. So I believe I've presented everything that the aldermen have asked of me right now, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that I could to the best of my ability.
Thanks, Dave. So Marty, I had a quick question for you. So the challenge for everyone in the room that's just walking in, we're talking about our sanitation fund. The challenge is there's always going to be an increase in our sanitation costs, and at the same time, we're trying to reduce the debt that you laid out. And so, Marty, in the one illustration that's showing the tax increase over 3 years, I think I asked at the last presentation, we're going to have to do a lot of education around this either way, but is there a way to have this listed on our taxes so people can understand? Because this is the one thing that if there's a vote to go down this path of the tax increase or the blend, I would like to know if we can show that listed out on our tax bill with the understanding that in 3 years it's going to go away.
In this case, so 2 things. We can always ask the county that we would like, and the way that we ask the county is how we prepare our ordinance. So we would prepare a separate ordinance, and the ordinance would say, for the specific purpose of solid waste collections, a tax levy, and it would be, so City of Evanston, solid waste, and there would be the tax amount. They're usually reluctant. If you've seen a tax bill, they get longer and longer, but we do what we can by how we pass our ordinances. We have been able to add things over the past few years as we've broken out the library in different ways, general assistance, so we would ask. I do not want to leave you with a misapprehension. The tax increase doesn't go away after the 3rd year. As the costs for either the contract or the wages for internal staff go up, those have to be met with a revenue source. We can provide a longer-term look at this. This was just 3 years already. The print gets small just going out 3 years. So those fees will change continuously into the future, failing a deflationary period where wages and contracts go down, or a technology change. If there's a way to change how we pick up, or finally, that residents also can manage their costs on this by by all going to 65-gallon.
Right.
So then their costs have dropped.
Alderman Rainey.
Well, in addition to the fact that by putting it on the tax bill, those who deduct federal taxes can deduct it. It is fair. But when we talked about raising the rate for parking, et cetera, people said, oh, no, that's regressive. That was not regressive. You don't have to get a parking ticket. You don't have to get a ticket for parking in front of a fire hydrant. Those fee increases were not regressive. However, these fees are regressive. Everybody has to have garbage pickup. Everybody has to have, I believe, recycling pickup. Everybody has to have those kinds of things. So this, I believe, is regressive. And everybody gets their water bill, and these fees are put on your water bill. I believe that we should leave this exactly as it is. It is what it is. I'm not crazy about that phrase, but what we have already on the books is fine. Any additional charges, I believe, should be spread across all the taxpayers in the city. Because I never call the fire department. Absolutely never. Fire safety, fire service is absolutely essential in this community. Everybody pays. Sanitation is absolutely essential. Everybody should pay. This charge, these additional charges should be spread all across the city. We should all pay. Whether a person has to have a large can or a small can, whatever service they require, we should all pay. We have a rodent problem in this town. The more we spread this across everyone, it is fair. It's just absolutely fair. And to say that $19 added to an annual tax bill is regressive is crazy. We're making this very fair. Somebody's going to have to pay it. The garbage has to be collected. I guess we've probably bargained. I'm counting on our staff as bargaining as best they could with Groot. It seems that most of the charges across all of the bidders was pretty close, and Groot seemed to have done the best job. So that's why I support going to placing additional costs on the tax bill. We pay for other people's recreation. I know that the skaters at Robert Crown are not paying for all the costs of the ice rinks and the ice maintenance and Robert Crown. I know that. I don't care that I'm paying for that. I think having ice at Robert Crown is a real amenity and makes this a more livable city. I know that. I know that maintaining the baseball fields is not being completely covered by people who play baseball. I don't play baseball, but I don't mind paying for it. I know that the people who commit crimes or, have traffic tickets, they're not paying for everything. I don't mind paying for the police department. I'm not benefiting from a pension. I don't mind paying for it. So that we are making people pay every penny to have their garbage collected is not, we should all pay for it. So that's why I'm supporting totally putting it on the tax bill.
Okay.
Alderman Rainey, I do. You referenced negotiations. I think the team did an excellent job, better than I did 3 to 4 years ago. They got 2% thereabouts on the cost. 1.5 to 3.5, and then had a decrease this year in the rate. So I'm very supportive of them with their efforts this year.
So are you asking us, I'm sorry,
That's okay.
Alderman Fleming? And then
Dave, I have one more clarification question for option number 2, just to be sure. So that would be property taxes only, but that is not, that's for the entire charge. That's not just for the increase between last year and this year. Is that right?
There would be this chart would indicate there is no sanitation charge increase from 2017 to 2018. They would remain at their existing, so what we're showing here is what we currently bring in sanitation
Right, I guess so. I'm looking in the pack, because that one is fine, but I'm looking here when you give us the actual cost for the market value of the home, and then with that 1% increase for taxes on 228. I just want to be clear, so that is, you get no sanitation charge on your water bill if we go this route, right? It's all looped into your property tax? No,
you
that's just the
you would
increase.
get the existing sanitation
Okay,
charge.
that's what I wanted to be clear.
And then it would
Okay.
increase by this.
And that does not include if you want a yard waste cart? Or
That
does
is
it in-
correct.
Okay.
If you don't have a yard waste cart, when you get one, there would be a.
There would, so with a
you
$50
would use the
increase.
existing fee, yes.
Oh, use the existing fee, so still no increase
Existing
for-
fee.
Okay, thank you.
So are you looking for a recommendation this evening, right now, to go to council, or?
It's not urgent at this point. We should,
Let me jump in on that. Sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, we would then put this into the budget process.
Perfect.
And we've got other revenues that we're looking at, and we would
Right.
bring them all forward so that we could be effective January 1st.
And then the public will be able to see it again?
Yes.
So is there a motion to send the recommendation for option 2, and then you just complete it as a budget memo?
Yes.
And then we vote on it, budget. Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we call this the sanitation fairness motion, and I move that we, instead of raising the amount on your water bill sanitation charges, that it be placed on the tax bill.
So, can you
Second.
recommend an option, Alderman Rainey, just to make sure that we're all in
Option
sync?
2.
Okay. That's what I'm
Second.
look- It's been properly moved and seconded. Seeing no further lights for discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. We have item A4. Alderman Suffolk.
Item A4 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a 2.5-month lease agreement with Mudlark Theater Company for the Noyes Street Theater for action.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Seeing no lights for discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. We have 2 items for discussion. I'm looking at the time, and also one other public comment. So, Mr. Ritzky?
Thank you. My first comment, we all know the city's in deep financial trouble, $6 million in the hole. I'm a little, one alderman tonight suggested selling libraries. I think most citizens are not going to tolerate a fire sale mentality of our parks, our assets, because we're in trouble. We are in trouble because city council members misuse money here. They misuse money on plenty of things like bars on Howard Street. The night we were told basically that we had a budget problem, this council approved $1.4 million for a theater for private use. That's why we're in trouble here. And we have employees that really do nothing. They have jobs that are really useless. And we have other employees that we need things that need to be done, and they're not getting done here. So you council members have a lot to do. Mr. Stonebeck, the numbers he presented, he claimed one of the numbers was a source of revenue. That's a transfer from the general fund. That went against recycling, and that wasn't for that, just on his numbers he presented. And as I've been speaking about the mess at the water department for so long, I mean, basically what's going on there, they're transferring $3 million and $3.4 million out of that fund. They're putting it from the general fund into the general fund of this city. And I was told at one time that was to cover expenses and things. Now, in the new budget that we're being proposed, we're adding more money out of the water fund to cover things. So there's a lot of double talk here with things that are going on. We need to get to the bottom of a lot of things going on with this budget. Council members have a responsibility to ask a lot of questions. These guys are not really managing the money. They're in a state of panic because the budget's in so much trouble because they've misused the money. It's a very, very serious problem the taxpayers are going to pay. What you just heard from these pension people, they're basically asking you for a 3.5% property tax increase. That's what they're really telling you. They didn't come out and say that, but that's on top of everything else. And then they're telling you they're going to do a borrowing. That's going to even be more. I mean, we're going to spend money to have them tell you that? They ought to have told you that immediately, because you're not going to be able to stomach it anyway on top of the other tax increases. And Robert Crown, they haven't told you the real number there either. That's going to be another 3 or 4%. They're just pretending next year we're borrowing a little more. So we have a lot to talk about here, and the council members really need to ask a lot of questions of budget memos. And we've really, and as I keep saying, the water department is a very serious problem, well beyond the pension issue. They're trying to basically take that and pass more money to the water bill, which they don't have control over that fund. They do not know where that money is going, how it's being allocated. I believe Evanston residents are paying excessive fees, basically because the other customers aren't paying their share. And I've said that numerous times, and I've asked for an analysis of that, bring an independent auditor to look into this. And, we're not going to sell our assets off our parks and things. We're going to look at this thing closer, and I'll have more counsel. Thank you.
Thank you. See that we don't have anyone else signed up. We have 2 items for discussion, and I don't know if anyone on the committee requested or if there's staff present. We can hold these items over to our next meeting, given the time and the number of people in the council chamber is perfect. All right. I'm sorry, Alderman Rainey.
I really would like to discuss this, at least in context of the budget.
Sure. Yeah, it isn't going anywhere.
It's amazing.
It's an important topic. I agree. All right. So before we adjourn, the Plan Development Committee meeting will begin at 7:45 promptly. Is there a motion to adjourn? Is there?
Move adjournment.
Oh, I'm sorry, Fleming.
Well, no, one thing about the, no, actually I don't. I want to move to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. The meeting is adjourned. P&D starts in 15 minutes. Thank you.